Hey, TVT by Mr. Jonathan. 4 racks, no gas, into getting some gas. And then, okay, so the way this build works is you plan what you're going to do by gas, because we already know where all your minerals are going, right? So basically, it's a marine build, which means that the minerals is the most important thing, and however many marines you can get is the most important thing. But because you know where every bit of your minerals is going, right? Priority 1 SCVs, priority 2 depots, priority 3 marines. You already know where that minerals is going. The only variant, the only other thing is your gas. So you actually want to prioritize what you do in the game based on your gas. You want to say, my first 100 gas is going to be +1 attack. My second 100 gas is going to be stim. My third 100 gas is going to be factory. My fourth 100 gas is going to be combat shields. My 5th 100 gas is going to be starport. My 6th 100 gas is going to be 2 reactor cores. And then, so on and so forth. So you write down this list of things. And while you're playing, you just kind of automatically always keep up on SCVs and depots, because you're going to do that in every matchup, so it's not like something you have to think about. So you always keep up with marines and depots. You always make sure that any racks you have are making marines. And then you look at your gas and say, okay, where does the next 100 gas go? So you have this list of things. So, the first one is +1 attack, the next one is stim. So if you have 400 gas, you're 4 things behind. So you should never have more than like 97 gas, because if you have 100 gas, you should have spent it on the next thing on your list. So the way you're playing this is kind of wrong. You don't have the ability to spend the gas that you're getting. So yeah, dude, also, that's how I remember the build when you're just trying to memorize it, and it's hard to memorize a build. So instead of memorizing the actual build, you just memorize the order in which to spend your gas, and that makes memorizing it a lot easier. But you don't need to memorize builds. You can just write them down on a piece of paper and put the piece of paper under your keyboard and read the build and do the build. So the build that I recommend everyone in the universe do in TVT, again, is just this Thorazane TVT audio build. And you click this thing, and you click this thing, and then it tells you how to do the build.
Your build will begin in 5.
So simple
4.
stuff. You should totally do that build and do it every time, because it gets you the things you want, and it just gets them to you faster. So why not do it? As far as this turret ring, this is a bad turret ring because it's impossible to get past this turret. So what is this turret doing? Nothing. It's useless. Also, making a turret ring in general, the concept of a turret ring is to make you immune to damage in your main and natural while you're out on the field pressuring your opponent. So if your marines are just sitting in your base doing nothing, then making a turret ring is actually really bad. Because what happens is you're saying, okay, I've got a certain amount of money. Every penny is going to go into marines if that's possible. So anything that I build that is not a marine is money that I'm taking out of the size of my army. I'm reducing my marine count by making anything that costs minerals. And turrets cost minerals, so you should be defending against early Banshee, early drop kind of stuff by keeping your marines in your base. So you got this dude on the watchtower, that means he can't tank push you. You got a bunch of marines here and a bunch of marines here and no turrets. And suddenly he can't do anything with Banshees or drops or any of that stuff. So you defend against a tank push by having your guys on a hotkey and spotting the tank push coming really far away from your base. Then you defend against everything else just by keeping your marines and your mineral line. This is actually, these 2 TVT games you gave me were both the same, triggered the same advice. Dropping mules in time is very important. Getting more gas is important. Spending the gas you have is very important. Getting your gas later to allow you to have more minerals and therefore to spend the gas that you have more accurately. Basically, my point is that this is just a really bad build. Any build that has 600 gas that you can't spend, there's literally nothing that you want to spend that gas on, or can, even with the buildings that you have. Like, there's no way. Like, if I told you should have spent this gas, you'd be like, on what? What can I build that costs gas that I want at this point? Nothing. So you shouldn't have this much gas. Or you should be getting double ups, a starport, and some medevacs. Or you should be building reactor cores, or, stuff like that. So this is just a really sloppy build. I don't like it at all. 10 minutes, the Thorazane build is going to give you 104 supply. This build gives you 63. The Thorazane build is going to have all upgrades completed and 52 workers. This build has 33 workers with 12 dead. So 45 workers, which is still far less than 52. And no upgrades completed. No stim, no combat shield. So getting stim as early as possible is important in TVT because if you take a bunch of Marines for him and a bunch of Marines for you, and everybody fights with their Marines, and one side has stim and the other side doesn't, or one side has both stim and combat shields and the other side doesn't, the side with the upgrades is going to win by such a huge, ridiculous margin that it's just not even funny. So upgrade if you're going for Mass Marine in TVT, you just really need upgrades. Next thing is tank pushes. Is there a way to not die to a tank push? If the first sign you have that he's tank pushing is when he's already sieged up at the bottom of this ramp, and you don't have stim, and you don't have combat shields, and you don't have any infantry upgrades, and you don't have any medevacs, and you don't have any tanks, and you don't have siege mode. No, there is no way to survive this tank push. So it's going to kill you, and you've got nothing to say about it. And that's why we get upgrades and we get all those other things, because otherwise there's just no way to deal with tank pushes. So you have two choices, right? You can either get an appropriate number of Marines and Marine upgrades in order to be able to deal with the tank push by overwhelming it on the low ground, and rely on spotting the tank push up front. But that's a lot of things, right? You have to spot it early enough, you have to have all the appropriate upgrades, you have to have your Marines in proper position, you have to attack in a proper arc, you probably have to pull workers. There's like 5 things required to make that go well. So a much easier way to defend against tank pushes is just to get tanks and get them early and get a lot of them. And that'll make you immune to tank pushes just as well. So you might want to try just going tank Viking as a strategy. Like in TVT, make 1 Rax with a reactor core on it. Never make another Rax for the entire game. That 1 Rax will make 2 Marines at a time all game long. And then every penny you have that isn't going into those 2 Marines at a time is going to go into priority 1 tanks, priority 2 Vikings. That's it. Just make a ton of tanks and a ton of Vikings and nothing else and see how it goes, because it's actually a common, successful, and good TVT strategy. Gwenny, don't let him do that. If he goes to do it, you close the laptop. I don't want people banging on my laptop. Anyway. So, those are your 2 choices, man. But they both come down to don't do this build. This is not a build. Do something else. So, you want to copy an actual build from somewhere onto a piece of paper and read it while you play. And practice it a couple of times versus nobody so that you can really get it down. And then when you're doing it on the ladder, every game, whether you won or lost, go into the replay, fast forward to 10 minutes or 12 minutes or whenever your build completes, whenever the piece of paper runs out of things written on it, and then just look and see if you did all the things you're supposed to do at the times you're supposed to do them. And getting a good build will win you this game easy peasy, man. And that is all of the build thingies, the whatever thingies. Replays, that's what they're called.